everyone. Thank you for sticking with us. What a great afternoon it's been already. And thank you, Kristin, for joining us.
Everyone awake? Are we the last round between now and happy hour?
Exactly. Almost to the home stretch. Thank you, Michael, Jennifer, Penry, this whole entire LinkedIn crew. The event has been fabulous, and we're honored to be a part of it. So it's great to be here with Kristin Lemkau. For those of you who don't know, she is the CMO of JPMorgan Chase, coming on 3 years now.
Yep.
And she's been named,
survived.
Well, more than that, incredible leader in the industry. You have been named Advertising Age's Power Player, Forbes' most influential CMOs, and you're one of Fortune's most powerful women. So really delighted to be here with you.
Thank you.
In the interest of time, we're going to really focus our comments today in 3 areas. The first is what's happening in marketing. So what's groundbreaking in marketing? Second is how you've taken social at JPMorgan Chase beyond marketing across the rest of the organization. And then the third is culture. We've heard a lot about culture this afternoon. How have you actually operationalized culture to achieve what you have? Yep. Okay, so let's start with marketing. I think probably everyone in this room either has or has applied for, or at least has heard of the Sapphire Reserve credit card.
Maybe not the Amex people, but everybody else.
Except for that, maybe. But this, I mean, I think just objectively speaking, you look at, you've run out of metal for this product, probably the most successful credit card launch in history. Tell us about how that came about.
It was fun. It was fun. I mean, I'll tell you, I tell my team all the time that we think a lot about how banking and payments are being disrupted, but marketing is being disrupted faster than that. We're seeing this move from ads to navigation, interruption to permission, digital to mobile, brand awareness to personalization. And at least every CMO that I have spoken to, we're all trying to figure out what this new playbook looks like without blowing up the old playbook and your results that you have. And I think this was the first time we really saw the new playbook play out. The first thing was invest in a really great product. A great product will always sell itself. If you have to put the balance between product and marketing, put it in product. So the product itself was awesome. It had a huge 100,000 point premium. It had 3x points on travel and dining. But when the product came out, it initially leaked by accident. Somebody had sent out the sales materials that we had distributed in the branch. And this kind of craze started about, really, would they do this? And is the point premium that big? And an influencer surge kind of came on about the product. We thought we would reach, we had a number in mind of what our annual forecast would be. By the way, you should put some more money in forecasting as well. We hit that inside of 2 weeks.
And so you had an annual forecast, and you hit the number in 2 weeks.
In 13 days.
That's unbelievable.
Yes. And we thought, oh, this is going to be a disaster. We ran out of the fancy boxes. We ran out of the metal. We were going to get all this hate on Twitter. And instead, the opposite happened. People thought, oh, my God, it's running out. Like, we've got to apply. We had all of those results. We're now double the annual forecast in 2 months. And we're setting a target for 5 times that by the end of the year. The product's been such a big hit. And I think what we learned was we did no paid media. All of the money was in the product premium and in the card design. We are now about to launch a paid media campaign with James Corden from Carpool Karaoke, who's fantastic. And we'll be producing segments about what's new and next in travel with him. So it's a fully not only digital first series, but really thinking feed first in getting people to watch content and having them opt into it than the brand talking at you about what to buy.
And something like 3/4 of these card holders are millennials.
Correct.
So how did you think about acquiring those as the customers?
And we didn't look at the design target for millennials. I think one of the last speakers said that millennials is really becoming more of a mindset of people who expect an Uber for everything. We went after people who were traveling differently. It wasn't about airline points and hotels. There are people who travel that way, but there are people who want to discover it on their own and would rather do an Airbnb, et cetera. And that was the psyche. We happened to hit at millennials. What surprised us were how many of them were willing to pay for a premium card, and how many of them were really true tier 1 credit, because I think there's this myth that millennials are all cash strapped and living in their parents' basement and all the market research we see, and it's not true.
Wow. So no paid advertising. Put the money instead into the
paid
product.
is coming.
No
paid advertising is like haunting me now that we're going into 2017 budgets. But.
So that's okay. So very interesting. Yeah. So shifting the strategy on its head.
Yep.
Very interesting. But that's not the only place where you've really deployed social and digital.
Yep.
JPMorgan Chase. You talk about an incumbent who's really embraced fintech. I think you guys are it. Talk about how else you've deployed social across the organization.
We are getting more aggressive in social selling, right? And again, this social word is I'm probably not the first speaker to say this, should go away, right? It's not social media, it's just media, or social selling, it's just selling. We had a pilot with our mortgage bankers where we use LinkedIn Sales Navigator and Hearsay. And we'll extend that to 650 mortgage bankers by the end of the year. And we're working with our private bankers and our FAs as well.
And why is that so important? I mean, you always talk about humanized content, but how do you link that with your employees? And isn't that a huge compliance risk?
Well, our friends in compliance, and they are now friends, I think are realizing that social is a much more controlled way than what's happening on their own. They realize that people were doing it anyway. And your best employees are going to be advocating for your brand in ways that may be awesome and ways that may be off-brand. So somebody gave me really good advice early on in my job where they said, if you feel resistance, teach. So I think we've spent, and everybody isn't going to fall in love with your cool idea. By the way, I've used this in marriage as well. It works equally effectively. But I tried it out in the compliance team first. And they, I think, have become bigger fans of social in that it is, and specifically social selling, in that it's pre-approved, it's on brand, and it's giving these people tools that they want and are looking for anyway. Whereas, like, I came up as a PR person, and the process map for answering a media call is you pick up the phone and you say whatever you want based on your judgment, and you hang up the phone. And putting out a piece of social content either under my name or under a salesperson's name is a much more controlled channel.
And so let's be specific. I mean, what kinds of content would a mortgage banker share on a LinkedIn or on a Twitter?
Well, on LinkedIn specifically, they love because it's long-form content. And so there's much more control and insight around that on the Trulia Zillow merger, or why the home equity market is hot right now, or we have a JPMorgan Institute that has these localized insights in different markets, and how can we regionalize what that data looks like that we glean from all of our transaction data. So it's much more thoughtful than stuff that they're having to scrape or links that they're sharing. And
so if you feel resistance, teach. I'm going to have to try that at home.
Yes.
We'll see if it works out. Okay.
It doesn't work as well with my 9-year-old and 7-year-old.
But compliance people, it works.
Totally.
Okay, so we've talked about some of the breakthrough digital marketing. We've talked about across the organization, social selling across multiple lines of business, including mortgage, overcoming compliance. What about this cultural piece? I mean, how many employees does JPMorgan Chase have?
230,000.
230,000 employees. How do you mobilize that many people, that many divisions to actually embrace innovation?
It's easy to say we try to breed a culture of not being fearful and being innovative and taking risks. That's really, really hard to do when you're in a company that's an incredibly high-performance company, and particularly for the function that I run, we track every marketing dollar. We have to tie it back to ROI, everything that all of you know. And we're highly regulated. So there are real and necessary guardrails around us that we can't, I think, be as startup-like as some of the mantras would indicate. So tactically, what does that look like? I think trying to get real clarity around what the business outcome is that we're driving. Back to the cool idea. It's easy to fall in love with a cool idea or a fintech pitch. What is the metric that will drive success? It's surprising how many people will not agree on that. And then second, it was actually something I learned when I went to a leadership boot camp at West Point, is who is the decision maker? Because for us, we're also a highly collaborative culture, and you can over-collaborate to death and never get anything done. And particularly when it comes to things like a creative product, if everybody weighs in on your ad's going to come out looking really gross. So just insisting who gives in, forget the racy, no one's going to really look at that in a meeting. Who are the people here who are giving inputs? who's the decision maker and who has veto power. And that clears up a lot. It also clears up a lot of stuff that comes to my desk. I'm like, are you asking me for a decision? Or are you asking me whether I'm going to veto your decision? And it's like a little thing, even when you're in a meeting and you say, okay, who's the decision maker in here? You'd be surprised. People now know because I do this, but they'll look around like, what is she talking about? I'm like, well, then what are we here for?
And what about the role of leaders? I mean, you make a point often that it's actually not the people on the leadership team who have the greatest familiarity with these technologies. How do you reconcile that gap? Yeah,
I mean, we're still a work in progress on that, but for social media in particular, or media, as we should call it, in most cases, the leadership of your company, particularly a company as big as ours, the senior people are the ones with the most experience and wisdom and judgment on things that they decide upon. Social is the big exception to that. Your kid on Instagram does not make you an expert. And by the way, they're probably on 6 other things that you don't know about. And getting people to understand that we have to delegate that decision-making to the 26-year-old who's running social for us, or for our head of PR who really lives these tools every day, has been tough, particularly with the controls and legal and compliance people. They're all getting better, but it's taking a big company maxim that senior people know all and trying to invert it.
And is that something consciously that you've sat down with members of the senior team to encourage them to do, or is it just culturally something that's become part of the ethos?
Well, I see who flunks their training. We have mandatory social media training.
Oh, you do? So who runs that?
Me.
Oh, okay.
It's really getting them to understand the value of it. It sort of goes back to, if you feel resistance, teach. This isn't a scary thing that we can try to control. Like, I do a internal roadshow on this, and my last slide is the genie coming out of the bottle in Aladdin. I'm like, this is over. That this is how people communicate and act, and we have to figure out how to do this properly. This is the biggest shift in consumer media consumption since, people went from radio to TV.
Perhaps even bigger.
Right.
And so let's talk about this training. Who goes through this training?
Everybody. Everybody in the company.
Everyone in the company? Mm-hmm. And is it an online training?
Yep.
What does it cover?
It covers some of the basic rules of the road of what you can do and what you can't do.
Okay.
As well as, how we use the different channels. And in some ways, it's to educate people on the value of them, but it's also to make sure the employee who sends out a tweet at a closed conference knows that they could get in trouble for that, depending on what it is. There's certain restrictions that we have that make a lot of sense. It's not all, overrule, I hope.
Mm-hmm. And so it sounds like, there's a lot of people at JPMorgan Chase who have gone through this training. They understand that social is not necessarily something that you just delegate to the social team. Everyone has to own it. Yep. Everyone has to have that innovative mindset. And this goes all the way to the very top. So Jamie Dimon, your CEO and chairman, and others on your executive team have actually taken to social media themselves. They're LinkedIn influencers. Can you talk about influencer marketing and the value that you've seen from that?
Yeah, and that's one I would love to do a lot more with, and Jamie's leading by example there. The flip of the switch on where they thought that would be valuable instead of this social gimmicky thing was when we said it's a first-person press release. Like, for all of the energy that we expend on press releases with these dumb canned quotes that everybody knows you didn't say, people would much rather you break news yourself in your own voice about something that's important, and then we can reshare that on our website, and we can save money on Business Wire and all these other things that we kind of jammed in there. And they got it, that long-form content, it's, you shouldn't put out your shareholder letter once a year, which he does, and it's awesome. You should put out something like that regularly. You should summarize your shareholder letter on LinkedIn, and people sort of then understood the value of it. He's not on Twitter yet, but that may be a good thing.
There are other executives who are on LinkedIn influencers,
There
right?
are. Our head of corporate responsibility, the head of our institute.
And so same thing,
Yep.
they're just connecting with their constituencies.
Correct.
Well, great. So in the remaining time, I have some rapid fire and types of questions for you. Well, first, why don't you share what parting advice would you have for everyone? I mean, what's the best advice that you either received or something actionable that everyone here can kind of walk out with?
I got great advice once where I can't remember, I was agitating for some job, and the person said to me, if you want a bigger job, make your own job bigger. And it kind of flipped the accountability of waiting until somebody taps you to get promoted, right, which just doesn't happen often, to taking ownership over just taking on work, whether it was in your job responsibility or not. So I sort of learned to have a whole lot less respect for the boundaries of my own job, which can be interesting. It can also be harrowing, and take things on. And then the other awesome, simple piece of advice was from Jimmy Lee, who you know, who said, be the person that everyone wants to work with.
Oh.
And it's such a simple thing, but you know who those people are. They're the same name on everyone's successor list. They're the same person that gets drafted for all the projects because they'll make it better and it won't be about them. And you know the person when they walk in the room, you roll your eyes. But just being conscious of that, am I the person that everybody wants to work with, I think really helps.
Well, it seems like you've taken that advice to heart, because everyone I've ever met who has worked with you or works with you currently, they love it. So,
good. Or they just want the budget. That's fine too.
No,
I'll be your friend.
They love working with you. I love working with you. Okay, so some fun rapid fire questions. I'm springing this on you at the very end. So first one is Google or Apple?
Apple.
Instagram.
Then I'm going to get in trouble with Google that I said that.
Instagram or Snapchat?
Instagram.
Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
East Coast or West Coast?
East Coast.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kristin. It's great to have you.
Thank you very much.